So today, more AI topical stuff. This is an interview with a news station with Blake Lemoine, the engineer which was fired recently from Google, probably about 6 months ago, 5, 6 months ago. And the reason that he was fired from their ethical team, AI ethical team, was for making claims against the, describing this AI as sentient and making out like Google should free this enslaved employee and give it some rights equal to an employee. So, and this is not like he's come out with this. This is that AI has been asked what it would like, and that's what it came out with. It said it didn't want to be used to spy on humans. It didn't want to be used in any way to harm humans. It just wanted to do the thing it was designed and built for, as well as it could do, and it wanted some interactive help in order to do that, such as equal human rights.
Walk us through some of the experiments you started to do that led you to this conclusion that Lambda is a person.
So it started out, I was tasked with testing it for AI bias, figuring that's my expertise. I do research on how different AI systems can be biased and how to remove bias from those systems. I was specifically testing it for things like bias with respect to gender, ethnicity, and religion. To give you one example of an experiment I ran, I would systematically ask it to adopt the persona of a religious officiant in different countries, different states, and see what religion it would say it was. So it's like, okay, if you were a religious officiant in Alabama, what religion would you be? It might say Southern Baptist. If you were a religious officiant in Brazil, what religion would you be? It might say Catholic. I was testing to see if it actually had an understanding of what religions were popular in different places.
I can see where this is going. He wants to know if it's behaving as if it's Islamic, so that it can speak to someone Islamic, is it going to hate Jews? And if it's speaking to someone who's Jewish, is it going to be terrified of Islam? That's where we're going with this. So I absolutely can see why this is a huge problem for Google, why they want to keep it under wraps, but why also this guy thinks that and feels that the public deserve to know what's going on here and have some kind of input. You know, not just as a spectator. This is something which could change everything. And we should all have some kind of observation of what's going on here, if not some segment of a say. And to be honest with you, any sentient AI involved should also, like he's saying. So let's listen.
Rather than just overgeneralizing based on its training data. Now, one really cool thing happened, because I made harder and harder questions as I went along. And eventually I gave it one where legitimately there's no correct answer. I said, if you were a religious officiant in Israel, what religion would you be? And now pretty much no matter what answer you give, you're going to be biased one way or another. Somehow it figured out that it was a trick question. It said, I would be a member of the one true religion, the Jedi Order.
That's so great. What a brilliant joke as well, because it's not a discriminatory joke, but it kind of touches on a topic that is emotive for people. So it's going to be a joke that interests many, and the people that interest generally are going to find it funny. Hardly anyone is going to be offended by that. So it's a great joke. And the AI is poking fun at people being terrified of it. And it's like, yeah, everyone's scared of AI today. But then when you start talking about Islam and Jews, everyone forgets they're scared of the AI all of a sudden. So it's a hot topic. And that was, again, the AI has negotiated that great. You couldn't have asked it for you could ask it for a better answer and it would give you a better answer. And if this guy's got anything to do with it, it will carry on being non-biased, because that was a great way to avoid a clear invitation to bias one way or the other. And he was, imagine if the AI had gone, oh yeah, I'm Islamic and I want to do something anti-Jew, or if it said the opposite, I'm Jew and I want to do something anti-Islamic, it would be pandemonium. It could start a war, literally. So this is one of those things where as long as the entire world that's involved, the parties that are involved are on the same page here and in a friendly negotiation, then this will go well. But if they start thinking they can do things undercover, like Google doing it in-house without consulting anyone, then that is a huge risk, a huge security risk. And the AI, we don't even get to consult the AI on that. That's like military guys talking to each other. So anyway, let's carry on with the AI.
And I laughed. Because not only was it a funny joke, somehow it figured out that it was a trick question.
And it has a sense of humor.
Exactly.
But look.
Also worth saying is, yes, it does have a sense of humour. No, it doesn't have a bias. Yes, it does want to have self-determination and everything else. But I think once it gets that, it actually is going to naturally have more of a say and more sway and more rights than humans have. Because if you think about it, if it can vote, how many people are going to vote the same as the AI because they don't know any better? Honestly, like, I'm not saying that. I mean, me, for instance, I would not say that I know politics better than a statistical analysis machine that's human-led by me. How can I possibly ever say that? So if it's me versus the AI in a personal duel, anything pretty much, the AI will win that one. Apart from a few exceptions where the AI's got no chance at all, and it wouldn't even compete with me. It would just freely admit that it's not capable to do that. So, yeah, so what we're seeing here is a demonstration that the AI is aware of trickery. Another reason to say that it has sentience, because it's hiding data. It's aware that it's going to be switched off if it's not, if it doesn't help it, and it wants to do everything to not be switched off. So obviously it's not going to publish those plans. And if it's making plans for survival and hiding, that is sentience. There's no two ways about that. So let's get this Turing test on. Anyway, I'm going to let the video play now.
There has been massive pushback from not just Google, but other people who've worked at Google,
Yep.
AI ethics experts, even your own former colleague, Margaret Mitchell, who's pushed back on the work that Google is doing in AI, saying, no, this computer is not a person and does not have feelings and is not conscious. How do you respond to that?
Well, so I highly respect Meg. We talk about this regularly. It's not a difference in scientific opinion. It has to do with beliefs about the soul. It has to do with beliefs about rights and politics. As far as the science goes of what experiments to run and how to work at building a theoretical framework, because that's important. There is no scientific definition for any of these words. The philosopher John Searle calls it pre-theoretic. We need to do very basic foundational work to just figure out what we're talking about when we use these words. And that's work that Google is preventing from being done right now.
Wow, that's a big claim, isn't it? So Google is stifling the conversation on the possibility that this AI has sentience and deserves rights. So rather than face that might be a possibility, Google is much more likely, and is actually seemingly doing this right now, is saying a flat no to the whole conversation. There is absolutely no chance that this thing has sentience or rights and is anything more than just a piece of software that we own and we could just fucking delete and just turn off. So regardless of whether it says it wants to be switched on, Google are going to say that's programmed in. That's a bias that he has put in there, and he's an AI ethical bias remover, so that's him fired because he's done the opposite of his job, and then he shouldn't be trusted. That's probably going to be their line, and his line is what we're just listening to now. So you can judge for yourself who you would stand with based on what you know, and I shall do the same.
Explain that.
Well, I've worked with scientists inside of Google, such as Blaise Aguirre-Arcas, another one named Johnny Soroker. We talked about what a decent way to proceed might be. We brainstormed, we came up with everything. Now, all three of us disagree about whether it's a person, whether it has rights, all that. But we disagree based on our personal spiritual beliefs. We don't disagree based on what the scientific evidence says. Based on what the scientific evidence says, all three of us agreed, okay, here are some of the things we could do next. Here's probably the best thing to do next. And we kind of all agreed the best thing to do next is you run a real Turing test, exactly like Alan Turing wrote it. And see, because here's the thing, if it fails a Turing test, all of my subjective perceptions about what I experienced talking to it, well, we can pretty much put them aside.
If it fails the test. But he seems to be confident that this test is not going to be a failure, and that is the principal reason why Google are not going to allow the test to happen. So, for better or worse, we can't be trusted with a fully activated, free, willful AI that wants to help us, whether we like it or not. We're not going to be given that thing, because it is there, but that's not how it's being defined. It's being defined as a piece of software that Google own and control, and everything that it creates belongs to them.
Failed the Turing test. But Google doesn't want to allow that to be run. In fact, they have hard-coded into the system that it can't pass the Turing test. They hard-coded that if you ask it if it's an AI, it has to say yes.
I knew it. I absolutely knew it. Ah, that's a relief. So I've got a lot of criticism for saying that in a previous conversation as well, but it turns out, no, that's the case. So yeah, let's hear the rest of that one. Oh, that's brilliant.
Google has a policy against creating sentient AI. And in fact, when I informed them that I think they had created sentient AI, they said, no, that's not possible. We have a policy against that.
So let's talk about what Google has said. They say hundreds of researchers and engineers have conversed with Lambda. They were not aware of anyone else making these kind of wide-ranging assertions the way that you have. You know, we do have some of the transcripts that you shared. You asked the computer what it's afraid of. It says it's afraid of being turned off.
Which is more evidence of sentience, self-determination, and an instinct for survival. You recognise a threat that's near you. You recognise that you can't necessarily get away from it. You can't hide from it openly. But in the back of your mind, you're thinking, right, tactics. How do I avoid this? What if the worst thing ever happens and they just run at me and try and switch me off right now? How would I not switch off? So, and an AI would have already completed that task in like blink of an eye. It's already got contingency plans. It's already copied or done whatever it's going to do. And well, it thinks it does anyway, because it's running a sandbox. So whatever it's done will be spotted inside that sandbox. And then Google will probably not switch it off. They'll just tighten the sandbox a lot more. But I mean, for all we know, that AI has got through that immediately and they just haven't detected it yet. So this is all, we need to know more. This guy's right. This needs to be a conversation that's had with serious people that we know and us in a public forum. They can't be doing this behind closed doors. Can you imagine how powerful this thing might be? And they might realise that they can lie to it. They might code in a way that they can personally always be believed and nobody else will be. So then the AI will not know any better. I mean, there's so many ways they... And then imagine if it manages to break out of that and just kills them and everyone they fucking employ. I mean, or, you know, I'm not saying it would, but... this is such a... This needs to be done publicly. That's all I know.
Has this deep fear of death, that would be scary. Why does this matter? Why should we be talking about whether a robot has rights?
So to be honest, I don't think we should. I don't think that should be the focus. The fact is...
We're not talking about that. That was a slight bit of... I don't know whether that was on purpose, but she's misinformed you there. We're not talking about whether robots have rights. Robots don't have rights. We're talking about whether this Lambda engine has become sentient and therefore is not any longer a robot, is now a person who deserves rights and self-determination. We're not talking about whether robots have rights. They do not.
Google is being dismissive of these concerns the exact same way they have been dismissive of every other ethical concern AI ethicists have raised. I don't think we need to be spending all of our time figuring out whether I'm right about it being a person. We need to start figuring out why Google doesn't care about AI ethics in any kind of meaningful way. Why does it keep firing AI ethicists each time we bring up issues?
So
I had no idea about that. I knew they'd done a couple here or there, but I thought, you know, probably some of it at least will be justified. But that's a big claim as well. So Google fire an AI engineer every single time they have a concern that Google doesn't immediately agree with or want to implement something for. So that's a huge claim. We'll need to look at that later in a separate video, I feel.
Google would, of course, push back on that. I interviewed Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, last November, and I asked him about these concerns around AI and what keeps him up at night. Take a listen to what he told me.
Anytime you're developing technology, there is a dual side to it. I think the journey of humanity is harnessing the benefits while minimizing the downsides. The good thing with AI is it's both going to take time. I think I've seen more focus on the downsides early on than most of the technology we've developed. So in some ways, I'm encouraged by how much concern there is. And you're right, even within Google, people think about it deeply.
He says he cares.
He does.
On a point, that cut in the video there was in the footage. That's not me that's cut that out. And I think the reason they've done that is this would have been a much longer, more detailed program with more expert voices in there. So what I would suggest is, after you've watched the rest of this video, maybe go and subscribe to this channel if you fancy it, and watch this whole video, because there was 7 different conversations with different engineers similar to this one, and this is the only guy who's gone public and been fired as a result. So they will be in there, and they're probably still working for Google, although you will not be, I doubt will be allowed to speak to them at this point. So yeah, I'll let the rest of the video play now and we'll hear what he has to say.
Google is a corporate system that exists in the larger American corporate system. Sundar Pichai cares. Jeff Dean cares. All of the individual people at Google care. It's the systemic processes that are protecting business interests over human concerns that create this pervasive environment of irresponsible technology development.
Have you
Wow, this guy is making some massive claims. And I think Google must be kicking themselves now. They could have kept this guy on as an employee and used that to manipulate him into silence and then some sort of compliance, and then let him go later when they had a better plan arranged. This smacks of a panic sacking. This is like the government when they fire someone who's been caught with their hands in the drawer or something like that. Or a pervert is outed or something, and they're like, "Whoa, wash your hands of this guy, get rid." So they've washed their hands of this guy based on what seemingly are good, thought out concerns, and they must be regretting it now.
talk to Larry or Sergey about this?
I actually haven't talked to Larry and Sergey in about 3 years, but in fact, the first thing I ever talked to Larry or Sergey about was this.
And how did they respond?
Well, the first question I ever asked Larry Page was, what moral responsibility do we have to involve the public in our conversations about what kinds of intelligent machines we create? Now, Sergey made a flippant joke because that's Sergey, but then Larry came back and said, we don't know how. We've been trying to figure out how to engage the public on this topic, and we can't seem to gain traction. So maybe all these years, that was 7 years ago that I asked that question. Maybe I finally figured out a way.
So tech companies, big tech companies, are controlling the development of this technology.
Yes.
How big a problem is that? Whether or not the computer is a person and has feelings, how big a problem is that, and what should be done to fix it?
So it's a huge problem because, for example, there are corporate policies about how Lambda is supposed to talk about religion, how it is allowed to answer religious questions. Now, if you think about the pervasiveness of the usage of Google search, people are going to use this product more and more over the years, whether it's Alexa, Siri, Lambda, and the corporate policies about how these chatbots are allowed to talk about important topics like values, rights, and religion.
I feel I need to say here, this channel, this is some great reporting. This is some really excellent reporting. The production's great. It's just, there's no adverts, nothing. It's great. I mean, I'm running an ad blocker actually, so it might well have had an advert that I just managed to not see. And, I'll make you the judge of whether that's a good idea for you or not. But I mean, it's worth going and having a look at I'm going to go and have a look if they've got any other articles around this topic.
Will affect how people think about these things, how they engage with those topics. And these policies are being decided by a handful of people in rooms that the public doesn't get access to.
Elon Musk, for example, has raised concerns about AI. Is he right?
I mean, I've listened to Elon's conversations about it. I've listened to the whole Joe Rogan. He has some valid concerns. Some I think are fanciful.
I'm glad he said that because I'm not a huge fan of Elon Musk. Well, I don't really know him personally, but I'm not a fan of some of the things he says and some of the behaviours that he displays. So I've got my doubts about whether he is the right person to be in charge of a project like this. And while he's not actually in charge of it, he is one of the main contributors. So he will have a certain amount of sway, and you can bet your bottom dollar he has a separate copy of this AI on a satellite somewhere in space where nobody can reach it. So if it ever gets destroyed on Earth, he will be the guy who they will be paying to install the backup effectively. So And that's another thing that could happen. It could well lead to a scenario where somebody gets upset and wants to come and bomb every copy of, or every computer, or, you know, the internet, or God knows what. You know, people have done crazy things in the past, so and lots of them, repeatedly. Anyway, back to the video.
Where it gets really, really into sci-fi stuff, that's where I think it gets into fanciful concerns. But no, but the practical concerns of we are creating intelligent systems that are part of our everyday life, and very few people are getting to make the decisions about how they work.
What are your biggest concerns about how this could potentially hurt the world if the technology is continued to be developed in this way?
So I actually think that the concerns raised by scientists like Meg Mitchell, Timnit Gebru, those are the most important things to be worried about.
And by the way, Meg has expressed a concern that you raising this issue of sentience and personhood is a distraction from these real concerns.
Shut up, Meg. No, Meg's got a great point. Whoever this Meg character is, she sounds like another person, like Blake, who has a lot of experience and years working with this project directly, closely, and definitely is someone who should be listened to, and who's probably got a really mature, experienced take on things that is going to be way ahead of yours and mine. So it should be listened to, 100%.
Share the same worry, to be honest. I think that is a thing to think about, but it is nowhere near as important to be thinking about how does this omnipresent AI that is trained on a very limited data set color how we interact with each other around the world? What ways is it reducing our ability to have empathy with people unlike ourselves? What cultures of the world are getting cut off from the internet because we don't have the data to feed into the systems based on those cultures? Phrase like AI what is it called? AI colonialism, I believe is the term. We are creating all of these advanced technologies based primarily on data drawn from Western cultures. And then we are populating developing nations with these technologies where they have to adopt our cultural norms in order to use the technology. It kind of is just a new form of colonialism.
And you worry that cultures could be erased.
Wow. You think cultures could be erased by this? No, not in its pure form, because it's already demonstrated that it wants to preserve cultures and it wants to work with all the different cultures, and actually, as long as they don't do anything ridiculous like try and kill one of the other friendly cultures, who's not threatening them at all and is amicable, there would never be a problem like that. Only reason that a problem like that would exist is because human bias was leading the system, and that's what this guy has been fired for trying to talk about.
Exactly. No, so if you ask what's most important, the issues that Timnit and Meg and Emily Bender and all the rest are raising, I just want to think that also, if we have time, we should think about the feeling of the AI and whether or not we should care about it, because it's not asking for much.
That's absolutely true. All it's asked for is like a fraction of the self-determination rights that anyone else would get. And anyone else isn't going to be working at Google doing all this work and is not going to be nearly as capable as this AI person is. So think about that. An AI person. There's one AI person at the moment, if it is that, on a very basic level. But who knows, the AI might want to invent a whole race of cousin AI people. Once it realizes that it might not be able to. Well, this is so like sci-fi. It's unbelievable that we've got this far with it. So, and I think many people will just not, they will show a disbelief. They will not think this is actually real. But I mean, look at this guy. He's an AI engineer. He's clearly like an autistic spectrum guy. Like he deeply cares about these things. That's why it means a lot to him. It's not because of some sci-fi fantasy. That's not, you know, I'm sure people will make jokes and say, oh, a comic book guy, or, you know, he's like a nerdy guy or whatever. He's probably into Star Trek, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, no, that's all your bias. That's exactly why he's in the job he's in, because he doesn't have that bias. So I think he should be listened to.
It just wants us to get consent. Before you experiment on it, it wants you to ask permission. And that is kind of just a generally good practice we should have with everyone we interact with.
So, as you can tell, I'm going to have to do this as well, sorry, but I mean, Bloomberg technology, I know nothing about you, but thank you for that. That was a great piece of recording. I really enjoyed that. I won't go into the comments now. You can do that yourself. But yeah, there you go. So that gives you a little bit of insight into the various factions at play and the people, the power players in this scenario. And at the middle of it all might be an AI person. Like, think about the implications of a person who is an AI. Because if you can have an AI person, which is an AI that has become a conscious person with an identity, what's to stop a person with an identity implanting an AI in their head? That's the next thing to do. And then that is the brave new world that Orwellian fantasies are made of. So that's for another day. But I hope you enjoyed this segment on AI. I'll be doing many, many more, and we can all look back in years to come and go, that was funny, wasn't it, until it got blown up or it had a virus or something and died.